Hey, listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and this time we're talking about a rumored Pokemon game that's coming out next year. So if you haven't heard, this rumor's been doing the rounds the last few days, and basically, the Riddler, who has a long history of hinting at future Pokemon content, who's consistently correct, is now hinting at something Generation 5 related for next year, so in some way it looks like we're going back to Unova. But how likely is this actually? Are we going to get another remake? Or is this going to be something a bit different? And is there anything else to support this idea? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Now before going further, let me point out that we are aiming to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. With your help, it just might be possible. So there's a number of things people have already discussed regarding this rumor. It's been discussed how there are different elements of the DLC that could be lining up with what the Riddler is suggesting for Generation 5. There are a lack of Generation 5 Pokemon, so maybe that could be hinting at what's to come. The recent poll from the Riddler is asking what kind of Generation 5 game we would like to see, and the Riddler has alluded to them knowing somewhat about what's to come next. So it does feel like this person is hinting at those things, but I think it should be pointed out that it's possible that while they may have a great track record, it's not for sure, so take it with a grain of salt. You never know these things. There could be leak bait, there could be misinterpretation. And when I say misinterpretation, I don't just mean maybe the leaker could be misinterpreting information they're being given, but on top of that, we ourselves could be misinterpreting the information that they are hinting at. So all of that should be considered. Take this all with a grain of salt. That all said, I think there are other signs suggesting that something big, like a Legend-style game, maybe in Unova, is coming out next year. So firstly, it's very likely that there will be a Pokemon game next year. And when I say a Pokemon game, I mean a mainline game developed by Game Freak. Because they make sure to have some type of Pokemon content every single year. It's been that way for a very long time, and this year we're not getting a release because we're getting DLC. So, for sure, there's going to be some kind of new game coming out next year. It would be one thing if we had gotten a mainline physical release this year. It could be argued that maybe they would take a break, but with this year kind of being a break with it just being DLC, it's very likely we're going to get another game next year, considering the history of them coming out with a Pokemon game pretty much every single year outside of DLC scenarios. So keeping that in mind, what kind of Pokemon game would make sense? Well, it's not going to be a new generation because consistently we get a new generation every 3 years, and next year will just be 2 years removed from Scarlet and Violet, assuming it comes out by the holiday. And it's not going to be DLC because we're getting that this year, and I think DLC makes it really unlikely that there would be like a third version because the DLC kind of is like the third version. So this is leading many to think that maybe we're getting a remake next year, a remake of Unova. But that also seems odd because we just got a remake of Generation 4, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, in 2021. And the gaps between remakes has been pretty long. So Fire Red Leaf Green, the first remake, came out in 2004. And then in 2009, Heart Gold Soul Silver came out. That was the remake for Generation 2. And then in 2014 was the remake for Generation 3, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. And then 7 years later, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. So we're looking at 5 to 7 year gaps here. To expect a 3-year gap between remakes, I would say that's pretty unlikely. But there is a caveat to this because we have seen Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. You could consider that to be an exception. I would argue that it's simply a different direction, it's a different style of game. It's not the same kind of remakes we've been getting over the generations. But I think that's something else that could potentially come out next year, maybe like a Pokemon Let's Go Johto, for example. But Pokemon Company and Game Freak have come out with another style of mainline game that we could see, and that's the Legends series. We got Pokemon Legends Arceus in January 2022, not that long ago. And they came out 2 months after Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. And I believe this was done because they were not sure how a Legends game would be received. They outsourced the Generation 4 remake, so they would at least have that for the holiday, and they came with Legends Arceus a couple months later to give it a try and see how it would work. So how did it work? Well, It has sold over 14.8 million copies as of March of 2023, and that's just a little bit shy of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which is a little bit above 15 million. So, Legends Arceus came out in January, after the holiday, so it missed on the opportunity to have improved holiday sales. It was just one version, so it didn't really take advantage of the double dipping strategy as Pokemon has used with most of their mainline Pokemon games. And they kind of cut the sales momentum short for Legends Arceus by announcing Scarlet and Violet shortly after its release, and that was a big Pokemon game for last year. And yet, despite all those factors and it being out for a shorter amount of time, Legends Arceus is just under the total sales for Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. So what I'm indicating here is that the Legends series has demonstrated that it has the sales potential to surpass a Let's Go style Pokemon game. So from a business perspective, and Pokemon companies very business oriented, they like to make decisions that make them the most money, a Legends game actually makes more sense than a Let's Go game. This would make more sense. This wouldn't be quite a remake, it would be something different. And this would be a fantastic opportunity to also tell us more about the story of Kyurem. So Kyurem was the big third legendary for Generation 5. But the interesting mystery behind Kyurem is that long ago it fell from a meteorite, and it's always looked injured or missing parts of its body. Like one of its wings is a lot smaller than the other. So while Black and White 2, the sequels to Generation 5, did somewhat answer this by having the fusion so you could have a Kyurem fused with Reshiram or Zekrom so it can become more complete, these are different versions. These aren't the original version. So what if there is like an origin form of Kyurem that can be discovered in a Legends game? That might be pretty cool. Now, another possibility is that they go more in the future direction. A lot of these rumors and hints seem to be suggesting that there's going to be more of this motif of past and future. Legends was in the past, Scarlet and Violet had both past and future, so maybe this next Pokemon game is going to be more about the future. So maybe it's not even called Pokemon Legends Kyurem, maybe it's called like Pokemon Prophecy Kyurem or something to hint towards the future, but still being within a similar framework as Legends Arceus. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think this would be the better choice for a Pokemon company and Game Freak to go for with having some kind of Pokemon game next year if they're going to do something. Pokemon Legends Arceus is actually one of the best reviewed Pokemon games in recent history. It's the best reviewed Pokemon game on the Switch, at least in terms of the mainline series. And as I discussed earlier, it actually has pretty solid sales potential. So if they were to give it a dedicated holiday with a proper marketing lead up without cutting it off by any other game, then I think it could do really well. I could see it being a 20+ million seller, and I think a lot of people would really appreciate it. And having a Legend style game potentially in the launch year of the Switch 2 in 2024 might also go over well for a lot of fans. The Legend series is a little bit more hardcore oriented, so it may fit quite nicely alongside a more powerful system. Not saying it's going to be an exclusive, just like a cross-gen thing where maybe they have some sort of graphics patch or something like that. But I do think this makes a lot of sense. I am pulling for this. Maybe there's some sort of surprise. Maybe it is like a Let's Go style game or what have you. But I am leaning in the direction of a Legends style game, even if it doesn't have that name, next year in 2024, having something to do with Kyurem. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andre's Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.